Broadcast.
Okay, perfect. It is an honor for me. I was saying to chair this session with 4 speakers: Dr. Dell'Olio, Dr. Dolchak, Dr. Castellani, and Mr. Pelliccia. The session is about a very critical issue in energy security, yes, but also decarbonization issue, because as we know, the buildings are responsible for about 40% of global greenhouse gas emission until now. And so energy efficiency in buildings is one of the most important measure or tool, I can say, to fight against the climate change. So I see that our session will be interesting from this perspective, because we will discuss about perform calculation, about retrofitting of existing buildings, and also analyzing 2 interesting case studies about the historical buildings. So I would not lose more time. I would just give the floor to Dr. Dell'Olio as our first speaker. Welcome, Giuseppe.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to share my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay. So good morning. My presentation will be about a simple, albeit accurate way to perform calculations related to energy efficiency of buildings. Just a short overview. Technical specification 11300, which we probably all know, requires a heat balance to be performed monthly, each month during the heating season, which results in at least 6 balances every year, which is quite time consuming, of course. So I wondered if it is possible to do something different. Such a calculation, a monthly calculation, is justified by its alleged accuracy. I will try to show that a seasonal calculation, so only 1 heat balance for seasons rather than 1 per month, is just as accurate. And so, well, I can anticipate that should be adopted instead of a monthly calculation. What I propose is a seasonal calculation rather than a monthly one. And that will involve no significant loss of accuracy. So let's have a brief overview of what a heat balance is according to 11300-1. Which terms should we include in the balance? Heat loss through building envelope, heat loss because of air displacement. We change the air in our building constantly, continuously, of course. On the other side, we have heat gain from sun and heat gain from occupants and appliances. These are the basic 4 terms of the balance. Now, that has to be performed each month. So let us consider the first month of the heating season, November, for example. That's the case in most Italian regions. Now, when the heating system is started in November, heat produced is first used to reach the desired inside temperature, usually 20 degrees. From a certain moment on, further heat is needed to keep that temperature. Let us now think of the following month, December. Now, at the beginning of the month, the building is already at 20 degrees because that was already done in November. So during December, no heat has to be produced to reach 20 degrees, but only to keep that temperature. So during December, we have a heat saving. Now the heating system keeps the building at 20 degrees throughout December. And at the end of the month, the 31st of December, the temperature is still 20 degrees. So some of the heat produced in December will have no benefic effect in December itself, but rather in January. And in January, a new heat saving takes place thanks to heat produced in December. So from the December point of view, this is a heat loss. Basically, in any in-between month, and December is an example, two quantities should be added to the heat balance. Residual heat from the previous month, November, for example, and that is a plus sign, and heat shifted to the following month, January, for example, and that has a sign minus in the balance. Of course, in November, there will only be the second heat shifted, and in April, only the first heat residual. These are the extremes of the heating season. QRS and QSH, the two quantities I mentioned, are very difficult to assess with ordinary means. So if we wanted really to take them into account in the balance, that would be more complicated and would require much more time. So we have to find a way to keep those quantities into consideration easily. This is a heat balance according to 11300. So this is the standard way of proceeding. Each month we have two quantities gained, two gains, in green. I will not repeat the meaning, it's just to show what I already said. And two quantities lost in red. This is the standard way of calculating. This is the reality. So the quantities I mentioned are not the only ones. There is also Q residual and Q shifted residual in green because it's a plus, Q shifted in red because it's a minus, it's a loss. This is just to give a vision, sorry for this repetition, of the problem. Now, it might be easily argued that Q residual and Q shifted offset each other. This is not the case, or not always at least, because Q residual and Q shifted depend mainly on average air temperature during relevant months. And those air temperatures can be substantially different. Let's see, for example, March. March is preceded by February, which is still very cold. March is followed by April, which is rather warm, or at least much less cold than February. So in March, Q residual is much greater than Q shifted, and no offset can be reasonably assumed. Basically, Q residual and Q shifted cause a loss of accuracy. So I wondered, is there a way to perform a heat balance where these quantities are sure to be zero, or at least to be neglectable? The answer is yes. But for that, we have to find a period, or to perform a heat balance in a period before and after which the heating system is turned off, because that's the condition for having a zero Q residual and a zero Q shifted. And what is the time period where the heating system is turned off before and after it? There's only one, and that's the heating season itself, the whole heating season. So a calculation based on a seasonal heat balance would be more precise because these two causes of uncertainty, of inaccuracy, Q residual and Q shifted, are absent. And besides, this will be much more rapid because we will have one balance for season instead of 6 balances. Now we will describe in detail this balance. The steps we need is first find a way to calculate the individual heat balance terms on a seasonal base, and then replace the monthly quantities we already know from 11,300 into seasonal quantities. What are these quantities? The first one is heat dispersed through building envelope. Now, I will not get into many details, but this heat dispersed is calculated by multiplying a coefficient HTR times a temperature difference times a number of R. The temperature difference, delta T, is in turn calculated as average air temperature minus requested temperature, 20 degrees. When all these monthly contributions are summed up, the sum of products delta T times T appears, each product being relative to an individual month. This is the formula. Q lost for transmission equals HTR, a coefficient which is constant because it is typical of the building, times a sum, and each term of the sum is the product of a temperature difference times a number of hours. Now, this is exactly the concept, the idea behind degree days. So why don't we just replace this sum of products with the degree days? And do we know degree days? Yes, for all major locations, there are standards or legislation stating the degree days of the major location. So we can just replace all this with the degree days. Another term is heat dispersed by ventilation. Well, it's basically the same concept as for heat dispersed by transmission, which we just saw. The only difference is that we have to replace the coefficient H with HVE. But apart from that, the concept we saw still applies. So once more, we can replace the annual calculation with a degree days calculation. We can adopt degree days, just as we did for heat loss or transmission. Then we have solar gains. We are now coming to the plus sign terms of the balance, so gains. Solar gain is based on solar irradiance, which is reported in standard for every month. So all we have to do to pass to a seasonal calculation is to sum monthly irradiance contribution, and that's all. As to the internal gains due to the presence of occupants and of machinery and of appliances, also in this case, these are obtained by multiplying a conventional power times the number of hours in the single month. So all we have to do is to replace in the multiplication the monthly number of hours with the seasonal one, and that's all, very easy. One last, probably a little more complicated issue is that of the utilization factor. We know, I will not get into details, but we know that the gains I mentioned cannot be completely used, but only a fraction of them is actually usable. And the fraction is determined by the utilization factor. Now, I probably can come to this. How exactly can the utilization factor be calculated annually, or rather for a season calculation? It is very easy. The formula of the utilization factor features, I will not show it because it's complicated, but it features thermal capacitance of the building, heat transfer coefficient of the building, the ratio gamma of heat gained to heat dispersed during each month, and two parameters, A H0 per unit and tau H0 hours. These parameters may sound complicated, but they are stated in the standards. So all we have to do is to read the standards. Now, the first two terms I mentioned are constant because they are typical of the building. So they need no modification when moving from monthly calculation to seasonal one. As to the ratio gamma, it varies each month, but all we have to do is sum up heat gained during all individual months, sum up heat dispersed during all individual months, and ratio the former to the latter. That's ratio gamma applied to a whole season rather than to a single month. Now let's see if all this actually yields reasonable results. We applied this method to a country house recently, or quite recently built, 10 years ago. What we did was first calculate the energy performance index as per standard. So no new idea. We just did what the present standards tell us to do. Parameters A H0 and tau H0 were assigned the values prescribed by the standard. The standard is mentioned here, 13790. So the first parameter was 1 and the second was 15 hours. What we got was a energy performance index of 4,400, more or less, kilowatt hours per square meter and per year. So this is the benchmark calculation, what the standard tells us to do. We then performed on the same building the seasonal calculation, which is also described in a standard, and that's ISO 13790. So I'm not inventing it. It's already there. We only have to apply it, but it's less used. We assume the two parameters, A and tau, to have the same values as in the previous case. This is not completely correct because for a seasonal calculation, we should use specific values. We will do that soon after this, but we tried this just to have an all things being equal comparison with A. So the only thing we changed was seasonal instead of monthly. The calculation was now much simpler because there was only one balance instead of 6. And the outcome was an energy performance index of 4,345 kilowatt hours per square meter and per year. The error, as compared to the previous calculation, is minus 1.1%, very small. The last thing we did is to repeat once again the same seasonal calculation as in B, but this time we assume the parameters as they should be, so as prescribed by standard 13790. And those values are 0.8 and 30 hours respectively. This time we've got an energy performance index of 4,375 kilowatt hour per square meter and per year. And the error with respect to the original calculation, the monthly one, was even smaller, 0.4%. This is a summary of the results. The first line is the monthly calculation, the benchmark, so error is 0 by definition. The second is the seasonal calculation, not completely standard compliant, but very comparable to the previous case, and the error is minus 1.1%. And finally, the seasonal calculation, just the way, exactly the way it should be according to standard. And in this case, the error is minus 0.41%. This is just in words what we just saw in a table, so I can skip it. Conclusion, the seasonal calculation yields basically the same results as the monthly one. So the seasonal calculation should be adopted instead of the monthly one, as much simpler and providing the same accuracy. Once again, the seasonal calculation is not something we made up, but it's already one of the opportunities or the possibilities envisaged by standard 13790. These are the references we used. The standard I just mentioned is the last one. I think this is all. I thank you for your attention. I'm willing to answer any question you may want to pose, and to answer your emails if you wish to write to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. A strong way to simplify the standard 11300.
That's the basic idea. Yes.
Yeah. Very, very interesting, and the results of the modeling activity are also very interesting. I think we can postpone all the questions to the last part of our session, so that we can give about 15 minutes to all the speakers, and then we can just note our questions and have a Q&A discussion in the last 20 minutes of this session. So I would like to give the floor to Dr. Dolchak. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I have some troubles with my computer, so I will try to present with my presentation. Yeah, probably it won't. I hope it will go. Sorry, but otherwise, can you see the screen now?
We can see the screen. There is your picture.
Only my picture.
Yes.
This is something which is not completely okay. I don't know why, but the same. Okay, can I ask you just to postpone me to the last stage, because I have some troubles, but the connection is not, but the computer is something. I will just change my computer. Can you?
Yes, of course. Otherwise, you can also maybe share your presentation with us through email, and then we can share the screen and do the presentation for you. It is also possible. But meantime, while you do that, maybe we can just give the floor to the to our third speaker, so you have time to do that.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're most welcome. And I can write my email address in chat, so you can also share it with me directly. Okay, and I am giving the floor to the third speaker, which in order is Dr. Castellani, please. Welcome, if you are.
Welcome, yes, yeah. I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. And now I will try to share my screen. You should see the presentation. Is it?
Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's start with this intervention. The title is Energy Efficiency as a Key Factor for the Sustainability Pathway of Organization. The case of the European Space Agency is ESRI in Rome. This work is made by me and then by Professor Maria Carmen Falvo, Professor Federico Santi, and Engineer Maurizio della Fornace, that is the ESA facility manager of the site in Rome. Let's start from this good news. EU achieves 2020 climate targets. This news is from the last October. Which were these 2020 goals? They were 20% emission reduction of greenhouse gases compared to 1990 levels, 20% reduction of the primary energy consumption compared to the 2020 levels originally forecast in 2007, and also 20% increment in use of renewable energy for the coverage of the EU energy demands. But how you achieve these targets? The goal number one, so the target 20% greenhouse gas emission reduction, was achieved with a 34% reduction. As we can see, this was the target, and this was the level that EU achieved in 2020. Goal number two, primary energy consumption reduction. The target was achieved only thanks to COVID-19, because as we can see, the level in 2019 were over the target line, and then in 2020, the line went down. So we achieved this target only thanks to the pandemic event. Goal number three, renewable energy sources share, target 20%, EU achieved the 21.3%, as we can see in this graph. How the EU achieved this target? The European policies started from the Kyoto Protocol in 1997, and then the Copenhagen Summit, and then the Doha Amendment. But the EU took its own way to the 2020 with the 2020 climate and energy package, that were the legislative measures aimed at the implementation of the commitments made by the EU, approved by the European Parliament in December 2008. This policy is contained in the European Directive in 2009/29/CE. But how EU can achieve this target? EU needs the help of the member nations, and the nations needs the help of public and private organizations. For Italy, the 2020 strategy were represented by the following targets, because each state has its own share of the 20% of the entire EU. For Italy, it was the 13% reduction of emission compared to the 2005 baseline, the 24% of primary energy consumption reduction compared to the 2007 scenario, and the increment up to 17% on the gross final energy consumption covered with renewable energy sources. So public and private organizations had to follow specific governative rules to participate to this process. For example, with energy efficiency in buildings, with car fleet renewal and other things. But they could also benefit from the incentives provided by the government, such as the renewable energy sources incentives. Energy efficiency is also a key factor for the sustainability pathway of organization. Many UN Sustainable Development Goals are directly or indirectly related to energy efficiency. And the sustainability path of an organization as ESA, and we will see it in the next slides, have to comprehend energy efficiency. The 2020 EU goals for lower GHG emissions, lower primary energy consumption, and also higher the RES share are not only mandatory action that come from governative rules, but they are also part of the voluntary choice of organization to achieve many UN Sustainable Development Goals. Let's see the case study of the European Space Agency ESA-ESRIN in Rome, and let's see how they achieve their target within their walls. The ESA-ESRIN is the Italian facility of ESA and is a center of excellence for exploitation of Earth observation missions. It is located in Frascati, Rome. It's made up by 20 buildings for 35,000 square meters. It hosts 1,000 employees and also hosts 2 main data centers. What does it mean? ESRIN is the acronym of European Space Research Institute, and the missions and payload operation of ESA Earth observation satellites are managed here. So every satellite that look not in the space but on the Earth send their data to Rome, to Frascati. ESA-ESRIN main activities and growth. From 2010 to 2019, the activities of the site are constantly growing. As we can see, the physical archive in length of the archive, and also the workforce and number of employees, and also the number of visitors of the events and conferences increased from the index value of 2010. As we can see, in 2019, we have a value of 2, 1.2, 1.1. Despite this, the energy consumption in the year decreased, as we can see here, thanks to energy efficiency intervention and the increasing of the RES on the site, PV and solar plants. From 2010 to 2018, the energy withdrawn from the grid decreased significantly. As you can see in this graph, this is the electricity from the grid, 2010 and 2018. The natural gas from the grid, 2010 and 2018, so they decrease. But the RES on site, so the electricity from PV plants and the heat from solar thermal plants, increased in the same period. Why? Because ESA has been renovated step by step following the sustainability roadmap that we will see now. In 2010, they started with a 185 kilowatt peak photovoltaic plant and with a 30 kilowatt solar plant. They went on in 2011 with free cooling for data center, with thermal cut windows in some buildings, and with heat management optimization. In 2012, they installed motion detectors for bathroom for lighting, and they also had the timing of HVAC in the offices that were off during the nights and the weekends. In 2013, new high efficiency pillar in building 1, full LED lighting for corridors in some buildings, and full high efficiency pumps in building 5. In 2014, full high efficiency pumps in 3 buildings, solar thermal plant for the canteen, new UPS in building 8, new condensing boilers for heating center in B8 and B20, and the ISO 50001 energy management certification. In 2015, full high efficiency pumps in building 9, new high efficiency UPS in building 10, new dishwashing machine in the canteen with heat pump, new CRAC in building 11, and smart metering for data center. In 2016, new condensing boilers for heating centers in B16 and B10, new chiller in B8 with heat recovery. In 2017, high efficiency pumps in building 14, new chiller in building 10 with heat recovery, full LED external lighting, new CRAC in B4, and smart irrigation system. In 2018, new chiller in B16, and 4 more degrees in hot and cold aisles in data centers. In 2019, new rooftop for the sports center, this B15, new thermal solar plant, high efficiency HVAC for building 1, and the transition to ISO 50,001 2018 from the 2011. And the process now is still going on. Over the whole period 2010 and 2019, they also installed new inverter and brushless air handling unit, DALI LED lighting in data center. They had also a 20% rack reduction due to virtualization. They improved the IT equipment and also the behavior of the workers and the operation time of the buildings. So at the end of this path that has been 10 years long, what happens? About goal number 1, the 20% reduction of GHG emissions, the ESA ESRIN achieved a 55% reduction compared to 2010 data. As we can see, the 2010 has an index value of 100. The target was this one, so minus 20%. And in 2018, that is the last year of which we have data, they have a 45 index. So they had a 55% reduction of the GHG emissions. So considering the energy efficiency and renewable energy sources in the facility during the years as PV plants and solar plants, and also the reduction of the gram of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour of the Italian electricity grid during the years due to the increase of the renewable energy sources, ESA ESRIN achieved a 55% of reduction of GHG emissions compared to the 2010 level. Goal number 2, 20% reduction of primary energy consumption. ESA ESRIN achieved a 37% reduction compared to the 2010 data. So as we can see, the index value is 100 for 2010. The target was this one, so minus 20%. And in 2018, they had a 63 index of primary energy consumption. So considering energy efficiency intervention in the facility during the years, ESA ESRIN achieved a 37% reduction of the primary energy consumption compared to the 2010 level. The last goal, number 3, 20% share of renewable energy sources. ESA ESRIN achieved in 2018 a 20% coverage of the total energy consumption with RES. The last year is this one, so this is 100%. This is the target, and this is exactly the value that they had. Why we have to choose this value and not this one or this one? Because this value is the value that consider the local RES, so the PV plants and solar plants in the site, and the RES share in the electricity Italian mix. We don't consider that ESA ESRIN buy energy with the GDO with that is the guarantee of origin that is 100% renewable, because this value could be this one. So it is too much. This is 95% if you use this method. Our method is only with local renewable energy sources and electricity grid that is 20%. So this one. So considering these two things, so the local renewable energy sources and the share of RES in the Italian electricity mix, ESA ESRIN achieved a 20% coverage of the total energy consumption with RES. So at the end, EU achieved the 2020 goals of the 2020 climate and energy package that were 20% emission reduction of greenhouse gases compared to 1990 levels, the 20% increment in the use of renewable energy for the coverage of the EU energy demands, and a 20% reduction of the primary energy consumption compared to the 2020 levels originally forecast in 2007. How it was possible? The EU achievement was possible thanks to the commitment of each nation and its public and private organization, led to this achievement by mandatory rules, incentives, but also, and this was the case of ESA, by voluntary sustainability pathway of which energy efficiency is one of the most important components. The case study of ESRI, the European Space Agency facility in Rome, shows how an organization can plan a sustainability pathway, then follow it, and then achieve the 2020 goals within its walls, helping to achieve the general target of Italy and then of EU. ESRI achieved the 2020 goals, specifically adapted for a single organization in this way. They achieved a 55% of reduction of GHG emissions, a 37% reduction of primary energy consumption, and a 20% coverage of the total energy consumption with RES. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Perfectly on time. Perfectly on time. A case study which is very interesting and also is generating questions. But as I say, it is better to postpone the Q&A discussion after the other presentations. And I don't know if Dr. Dolchak is ready. I'm trying to check if I received his presentation. I'm checking my email. No, I did not.
Sorry, but I sent it. I can check it. Maybe it's for maybe it's fall to spam because I'm not in from your university.
Hey, now I've received it. Yeah. It was just a delay, so I will try to open it.
Sorry for these troubles.
No problem at all.
I didn't expect it either.
I would like just to be sure it works on my screen, and so I try to share my screen. Then you will guide me through your presentation.
Thank you. I will kindly ask you to move slides. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Is it clearly visible?
To me, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
Perfect.
please welcome.
So,
Janez.
hello everyone, I am Janez Dolchak, and today I will present you the extent of barriers and drivers to energy efficient retrofits in the residential sector, a bibliometric analysis. Next slide, please. Okay, so this part of research is as a part of a project which resulted in several papers. It was published in Energy Buildings, Energy Economics, and also my doctoral dissertation. This part which I will present today is an overview over the determinants that have been found empirically from our studies and also from other studies. So what is the motivation behind the determinants? So why should we overview the determinants of energy efficiency over and over again? To increase its level, to increase the level of energy efficiency. The residential sector in industrial countries is responsible for almost 25% of final energy consumption. The building stock is relatively old, as about 35% is more than 35% of building is more than 50 years old. The progress of energy efficiency is low, as only small percentage of buildings are retrofitted each year. And the housing and renovation comes here as one of the key factors of improving energy efficiency. And also with legislation, European Union is trying to stipulate the renovation rates and the efficiency rate. The next motivation we found, and also other studies found, that there is a huge energy saving opportunity. It lies in retrofitting roofs, walls, and other replacement of windows, doors, etc. Despite the availability and economic viability of energy efficiency measures, the realization is far below the required rate to meet the energy savings targets of EU and other industrial countries. This discrepancy between the opportunities and the actual realization is often labeled as energy efficiency gap, which is mainly caused by market imperfections that hinders the diffusion of these measures. Beside energy savings, there are a wide range of potential benefits, which are, for example, the increased asset value of houses, buildings, and in the increase in disposable income, energy poverty alleviation, decrease in unemployment rate, and many others. Implementation of energy efficient investments in residential sector is hindered by various barriers such as a lack of funds, lack of knowledge, lack of information, transaction costs, and many others. Several energy efficiency instruments have been, sorry, I didn't tell you to move slides, and thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem, I follow you.
Several energy efficient instruments have been introduced by the EU member states to tackle this issue, such as energy performance standards, financial incentives, and informative measures such as labeling and education campaigns. And in order to design effective policy measures to enhance future energy saving measures in residential sector, policymakers must be informed about these determinants, about the condition of houses and behavioral patterns, for example. Therefore, the objective of this study is to identify which determinants have the most important influence on decision for energy-saving renovations, and what are the relations between these studies identifying the determinants. So, to start with an overview over the existing determinants of energy efficiency, we should choose their characterization. There are two different categorization of these barriers. One is according to their role in decision-making process, and the other is according to their type of barriers and drivers. According to the first approach, according to the role in the decision-making process, the literature categorize barriers and drivers in let's say 6 processes, 6 stages of process: raising interest, gaining knowledge, forming an option, making a decision, implementing the measure, and at the end experiencing the measure. The other type, in the next slide, yes, the other type is according to their type. Meaning that you can categorize according, for example, financial, attitudinal, social drivers and barriers, and maybe informational, financial, and process barriers that have been done in the literature. And the categorization that we followed in this study is from Hrvatin and Zoric, which categorize into 5 categories: information and policies, economic factors, household socioeconomic characteristics, technical factors, building characteristics, and behavioral drivers. So the next slide, I will try to go to mainly to information and policy measures. Here in both numbers, we have studies that have found some effect of, let's say, regulation. What we, for example, saw, what we count for regulation: some building and planning regulation, energy, climate policy, and clean air regulation, for example, and any tax laws. We found that there is neutral effect of this regulation mainly because of insufficient or lax regulation, the lack of supervision and enforcement. Fiscal support has mainly act as a driver because of rebates, tax credits, budgetary instruments. However, not in all studies. Some studies have found that some households were not aware of grant scheme, or there is a free riding effect. Energy audits are mainly drivers. People appreciate if they receive a tailored face-to-face audit tailored to homeowner preferences and receive qualified auditor. So Some studies, of course, find that there is inability. They have so inability to afford it, lack of information, or the advice is too general. Information. So it's mainly a negative because people found that there is a lack of adequate knowledge or information, or misperceived salience. Social network, interestingly, I mean, it's as expected. Okay, it's as expected, but people really rely on friends, family, neighbors' opinion, interpersonal communication, and for example, some interesting things. Grassroots communities have proved to be successful in increasing the investment rates in energy efficiency. However, some cases where we have conflicts with neighbors, with national building protection agencies, it acts as a barrier. The informing homeowners from the company side, it's so we have mixed results. If they are unreliable, non-transparent, it acts as a barrier. If we can trust them, if they are reliable, it acts as a driver. Then economic factors, mostly retrofits costs acts as expected as a barrier. Saving in energy expenses, so mainly as a driver, but in some cases, people are uncertain about benefits. Economic viability, it depends. If it's profitable, they will go too, but sometimes it's investment size too large according to their projection of energy savings. Energy prices, mixed results. Again, some studies have found energy price expectations act as a driver, some that they act as a barrier. Time horizon, again, mixed results. If this period is too long, payback period, they won't do the investment. Other economic factors, what people found as a driver is the retained market value of the house, if guarantee period of the investment, of the renovation is too long, while the other economic concerns such as unemployment, economic crisis act as a barrier, as expected. Socioeconomic characteristics. So briefly, income, of course, higher income acts as a driver, while the age of homeowner, if it's older, act as a barrier. Education mainly act as a, in studies, mainly acts as a driver. Other socioeconomic factors, if so, number of family members have showed mixed results, while the not owning a dwelling, split incentives acts as expected as a barrier. Next, so these are socioeconomic. Please to the next slide. So I was talking about this one. So you can see income mainly as a driver, age of the homeowner, if it's older, then as a negative effect, barrier. Education is a driver, while other socioeconomic characteristics like split incentives acts as a barrier. Next slide, please. Thank you. So age of the building, of course, if it's necessary, you have to renovate. If a location of the building, colder areas, this is so mixed results. While technical parameters, if you want to enhance aesthetic as a part of integrated process, all this act as a driver. Also silent events like marriages, people sometimes renovate their house because of this reason. Better expected living condition, expected thermal comfort improvement, all this acts as a driver. And lastly, behavioral factors, awareness, if people are aware of the climate condition, if they have good understanding of the effects of energy use on the environment, they will probably go for the investment. Sometimes, of course, they are not engaged into the energy. They are not aware of, so they then acts as a driver. So lifestyle showed mixed results. Some studies focused on the question if this was a part of the do-it-yourself project, and as a part of lifestyle. We can also see here the discrepancy between some people that do it as a let's say as a part of their lifestyle or some project, or this is just a disruption of everyday life, stress. It's stressy to them. They perceive inconvenience, inertia, and it's also irreversible. Other behavioral factors, mainly negative, because, for example, timing, transaction costs, opportunity cost. If you have something else in mind to buy, to renovate, and it's a big decision. So this was the first part of the research. What we do next? The results that was showed before was based on empirical studies. Also, our studies were included, but many others. But what I do next is to use bibliometrics. So now, these days, we have a lot of data, not only empirical data, a lot of different data, and we can combine this data to gather different aspects of the study. Of the area that we study. And bibliometric here allows us to, let's say, to categorize, for example, determinants that were found in the literature before, according to their similarities, according to studies that have found them, and etc. So bibliometrics in general consist of four main methods: citation analysis, co-citation analysis, co-authorship analysis, and co-word analysis. So the next slide, please. Yes. So by analyzing the content of abstracts of the selected literature, I generated a visualized knowledge of the barriers and drivers of energy efficiency in the residential sector. So this type of analysis allows us for the creation of network of determinants that provides information on the co-occurrence of determinants in the literature. So what I did, I will just briefly, I really refined the search of all papers, not all, but refined into these categories. Author keywords 2, so residential, renovation, energy efficient, and determinant. So a very refined search, but also very broad search, because I include many wide range of words with the same similar meanings. I also included many document types and citation index, at least as long as they were appropriate. So doing this query, I identified more than 1,000 different works, papers, proceedings, and the results show the different clusters of determinants of energy efficient and energy saving behavior have been identified in the literature, while firm characteristics are mainly associated with barriers to energy savings. Behavioral aspects such as pro-environmental attitudes co-occur with other drivers. In addition to the thorough examination of selected papers, the bibliometric analysis provides interest aspects of the evolution of these determinants. I will briefly show you what I did. So according to the search that has been described before, I inspected the abstracts of selected works, so papers, books, and I was particularly interested in the determinants that have been described, that have been identified in the empirical research described before. So among all these words that have been in abstract, which are not the main idea here, I selected only those that were determinants, that was somehow related with determinants. So I create among these terms the procedure, the program created this map. Here we can see some groups of determinants are typically studied in common models. The largest nodes denotes the most frequently mentioned determinants. And in this way, I just want to see which determinants are more important. Meaning more important, they have been mentioned more frequently. So here I don't see the if this is a barrier or driver. Maybe they are related to barrier, maybe they are related to driver, but I cannot see the connection to the barriers or drivers. But I can see their frequency clearly. Okay, so the results of this study: first, I'm able to identify key research streams based on the historical development of published work in the area. Second, analysis of citations provides me with the network of influences between authors. Finally, an analysis of the content of the paper's abstracts that have been showed in previous slide allows me to visualize the current state of knowledge on the determinants of energy efficient and energy saving behavior in the literature. Since this type of analysis is usually equipped with a large collection of the data and analytical approaches, it can support the development of effective strategies for retrofitting residential buildings in the future. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Janet. Very interesting, your way of exploring this wide area of energy efficiency in retrofitting. And I will quickly give the floor to our last speaker, Mr. Alessandro Pelliccia, because time is running out, and I have to give you 15 minutes, so we have 10 minutes late in the last part of our session for the question and answer discussion. Please, Alessandro, you can take the floor.
Good morning to everyone. I can't share my screen because it says that you're still sharing. Professor Santi, I think. It says it's impossible for me to share.
You're right. I have to stop. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good morning to everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here to expose our study that we made together with Professor Santi, with Dr. Castellani and Acri, and with Mr. Di Prospero, Antonuzzi, and Zuppa. Our study consists in the improvement strategies of historic buildings used as offices, and it concentrates on a study in Rome, on a case study in Rome. As we already said, the greenhouse gas emissions are still rising, although the growth has been slowed down. It didn't stop, and greenhouse gas emissions, we have to reduce them in order to keep the global warming below the 2 degrees Celsius, in order to avoid the 90 centimeters sea level rise and evacuation of coastal areas, and a great risk of extinction of many species, like, for example, rice, which will lead to famine in the world. And as we said, the most important energy consuming sectors are transport, industries, and buildings. Buildings account for almost 40% of the global and final energy use, and they're responsible for more than 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. As we can see from this slide, from this graph, the floor area in the last years have continued to grow, rising of almost 65% in the period 2000-2017. And despite in the same period an energy intensity improvement of the sector, the energy has continued rising. The most final energy uses consist in the space heating and cooling of the building, the lighting, and other cooking and other electrical appliances like PCs and fridges, elevators, and so on. Italy is different from the other countries. For example, we share, together with China, the highest number of UNESCO sites of the world. This is to say the importance of our heritage architecture system. And also, we can see that most buildings in Italy are actually older than 100 years. And in fact, when they were built, they weren't thought for the uses that are made today, leading to a low efficiency of the energy system of these buildings. Our case study starts in the center of Rome, that unfortunately for the strategic role of the building, we can't say which, but the building was built in the end of the 19th centuries, and it now houses offices. As we can see from this graph, we analyze the consumption, the energy consumption dividing by energy vector of 2019, also to avoid the pandemic actions on the consumption. So we can see that natural gas is the main vector for heating the building, affecting almost 20% of the total greenhouse gas emissions of the buildings. Electricity accounts for almost 8 gigawatt hours. Natural gas accounts for more than 200,000 meter cubed, and the total primary energy accounts for 1,666 tons of oil equivalent. Now, the first intervention proposed in order to reduce the primary energy use of the building is the electrification of the heating system. Our thermal heat pumps are incredibly efficient machines, which have the ability to transfer heat from a lower heat source, temperature source, to a higher one. They are also reversible, increasing even more the efficiency of the production of energy and giving the possibility to make them use also in the summer season, reducing even more the primary energy, the total primary energy. They are also, as we said, fed by electrical energy, giving the possibility to feed them with renewable energy sources. The intervention consisted in putting our thermal heat pumps on the rooftop and collecting them directly to the medium temperature collectors. As we can see in the slide, the results obtained with this intervention. The primary energy reduction accounts for almost 27% of the primary energy of the heating system, reducing from 110 tons of oil equivalent to almost to below 81 tons of oil equivalent. Also, the CO2 emissions, due to the fact that we are not anymore completely feeding the thermal system with fossil fuels, will face a reduction of about 30%, or even more than 30%. The next intervention proposed consists in the building integrated photovoltaic. Building integrated photovoltaic is a system which consists in the energy self-production of the building, and at the same time it consists in integrating the photovoltaic modules with the building architecture. In fact, different solutions have been proposed in order to achieve them, to enhance the surface area of installation in order to produce more energy. The technologies we proposed, the first one is the substitution of the Skylights glazing with photovoltaic modules made of amorphous silicon. This solution gives the possibility to enhance the air installation, obviously, and at the same time to avoid it permits the natural light, sunlight to enter inside the building. Another installation surface found was the rooftop of the building in those areas that are not characterized by shading. Also, to enhance the possible area installation, a structure was thought a shelter was put on to cover the machines already present on the roof of the building, and covering them with photovoltaic modules. Obviously, this will increase the surface, the possible installation surface, and also the energy produced. And an important solution is the possibility to color the photovoltaic modules by applying a film. This will unfortunately reduce the energy produced, but at the same time it will fit with the architectural structure and reduce the aesthetic impact of the photovoltaic modules, which is an important feature due to the age of the building and its important structure. Here we can appreciate the energy savings that we obtain with this intervention. The total of this calculation was performed considering, let's say, the worst solution by applying the white film on the photovoltaic modules, and we can see that the total megawatt hours produced is about 150, which will lead to a primary energy saved of 27.8. Obviously, this primary energy saving is not a building primary energy saving, because it won't reduce the energy need of the building, but we can consider that this energy will not be requested to the grid, leading to a national, let's consider it a national energy saving, primary energy saving. The next intervention consists in the relighting of the building. The actual situation consists in fluorescent lamps with an average luminous efficiency of 50 lumen over watt, and a count of almost 345 kilowatts of electric power. And the current situation, the lighting system accounts for almost 10% on the total electrical energy consumption of the whole complex. The LED technology will help us to almost half the power installed, increasing the efficiency and leading the fraction of electrical energy to lower than 6%. And also more reduction will be obtained by implementing a daylight control system, consisting in dimming the light emitted by the lamps according to the sunlight which enters inside the building. We can see here that almost 43%, will halve almost the consumption due to the light system, and even more, it will become a third if also the daylight control system will be installed. And also the lighting energy numeric index will pass from 13.4 to 4.63, considering obviously also the light control system, kilowatt hours over meter squared per year. Another intervention which will help us reduce the thermal energy request in both summer and winter seasons is the replacement of the transparent casing. This intervention will consist in substituting the actual fixtures from aluminum frames with wood frames, and pass from a single glazing and substituting the single glazing that characterizes the present transparent casings with selective or low emissive double glazing, according to the position and the best solution in results. Here we can see the light transmission, the solar factor, and the transmittance that characterizes the low emissive glass and the selective glasses. In the following slide, we can see the reduction in cooling energy obtained by modifying by substituting the transparent casing. About 17.2% on the total cooling energy requested will be saved, and also in the heating season, we can see a reduction of about 10% on the total heating energy requested by the building. Other energy efficiency interventions are necessary due to the aging of the building, which makes the technical system very inefficient. Simple actions will lead to extraordinary results in terms of building's efficiency. For example, the installation of inverters on electropumps for heat transfer fluid. This intervention will lead to a saving of about 224 megawatt hours and a global primary energy saving of 2.5%. Another intervention considered is the substitution of the actual UPS system, which consists in two UPS of 400 kilovolts ampere that working with a load that, due to the fact that they work with a low load factor, their efficiency is extremely low, about 80%. With the substitution of this UPS group with two UPS of 100 kilovolt amperes UPSs will raise the efficiency up to 95%, leading to a total primary energy saving of about 2%. Finally, another intervention considered was the reduction. It was the installation of some automatic sensor for emission of heat and cooling in order to control the heating and cooling of the building. That will lead also to another 31% of reduction of these two energies in the corresponding seasons. We can arrive to the final results and analyze the total reduction of primary energy in the building. Obviously, the photovoltaic, for the reasons we said before, is in a different colors. With this intervention, we will manage to save about 26.5% on the total energy, passing from 1,666 tons of oil equivalent to 1,224, and also reduce the global greenhouse gas emissions of about 27%, and reducing them of about 1,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. Thank you very much for your attention, for your kind attention. Here we are.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for this very interesting presentation, also for remaining in perfectly on time. We have now 10 minutes, about 10 minutes for a Q&A session. So I have some questions, but I would like to prefer to leave you the floor to you speakers if you want to ask each other any question about the presentation or in general about some concepts, new concepts introduced in this exciting session.
I can start. I don't have a question, but I was only thinking that this session was very interesting because we could see all the wide range of what energy in buildings is. So we started from the standards, the study on the standards from Mr. Dall'Olio, to an intervention on a case study from Pelliccia. So he used those standards to design this intervention. Then my case study where I measured what happened at the end of a pathway, and then at the end Mr. Dolchak that studies all these things from a bibliometrical point of view, so from the standards to the case study and the measurements of the effects that they has. So only this is not a question. I was only thinking about this. This was a very interesting session for this reason, because we could see from the cradle to the grave, if we can say it, the energy energy efficiency in buildings.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francesco. I fully agree with you. It is very, very interesting, and also the problem of energy efficiency in buildings has many aspects to be analyzed and fixed, and many problems to be solved in order to decarbonize the building energy system globally, let's say globally. Other questions or ideas? Well, from my side, I would like to ask Giuseppe if, according to him and to his experience, it is possible to use this seasonal calculation for all the different purposes of the standard 11300. because the standard sets a methodology, but then it is used in many applications for different purposes. In case it will be modified, hopefully it will be simplified in the clever way you showed us. It will be also possible to keep on using it in all the different situations it is normally used.
Of course not. I mean, the method I propose is a simple one. And my hope is that it will be used in all the most common cases, which is flat apartments.
Okay.
In more complex cases like commercial malls, for example, or others, of course, a much more detailed analysis is and will be necessary. But for the simplest cases, which are also the most common ones, because many of us have found themselves writing an APA for apartments. Mm-hmm. Well, for the most common cases, I think it would be useful to introduce a simpler calculation, only for the simpler cases, of course. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. It would be really great to modify the standard in this way. Thank you. And any questions? Any other questions? Otherwise, I have a question for all of you. I was thinking to Francesco, but it is general, indeed. To reach the goal of full decarbonization of a building, any building like the one of European Space Agency, the other buildings we have seen, apartments, all those things, all the kind of buildings, we see that there is always the need of using renewable energy, not local, but taken from the grid. So the renewable production comes from somewhere, but not from the building itself to reach the zero, to reach the zero emission target of a single building. What do you think about this issue, most especially for the existing buildings?
I think that we experienced this issue in many times, also in different nations, because here in Italy we have emission coefficient for the kilowatt per hour that is about 250. In France they have something like 60, so it's very different where you are in giving a CO2 value of impact of that building. The way to buy from the grid green electricity maybe is the only one now. We should decide what green energy means. Why? Because in the ESA case study, they buy now green energy with a GDO, that is a guarantee of origin, but this is not a PPA, but it means that somewhere in Europe, for the ESA case, maybe it was an hydroelectrical power plant in Sweden, maybe, is produced electricity for them, but this is not cut away from the electric mix of Italy. So we count 2 times this energy from ESA, but also in the 260 grams of CO2 per kilowatt per hour in the grid. The PPA means that that energy made in that PV plants in this city, in this field, is only for me. So maybe the right way to see that I buy green energy is to make a PPA with somewhere that produce the energy only for me.
Yeah, very, very, yeah.
If I may add something.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
If I may add something. Yes, while it is true that reasonably, buildings, at least for a few years, will not be able to produce all the energy they need. So they will have to be connected to the grid. It is also true that with the spread of renewables, also dispersed generation or distributed generation has spread. So hopefully in the coming years, yes, a part of the energy needed by the building will come from outside the building itself, but not from very far. So the distance it runs on the grid is limited, and the energy losses also are limited. What I think we can reasonably hope for is the zero energy building, which is zero on a balance. In some hours of the day, it will produce more energy than it needs, so it will inject the excess into the grid. In other hours, it will, to the contrary, produce less energy than it needs and import the balance. So the zero energy is only on the balance, in my view. That's reasonable.
Yes. Thank you, Giuseppe. Yes, this is also true. This is also true. Yes. Whenever it's possible, at least, because in some cases, like for example, the one showed by Alessandro, to produce electricity locally, it is possible, yes, but the quantity is not very significant compared to the consumption. So of course it depends on the building, but it is true. And also this concept of the distance, it is very interesting and maybe not enough considered until now in the general policies. Yes. I don't know if you have any other questions. Okay. Otherwise, let me please thank you all. We are on time. We are supposed to finish at 1:20. It is exactly 1:20. And yes, we have been effective and also efficient in our.
Are other presentations going to be made available to us? All the presentations? Can we?
Yes. Now the AIEE Secretariat will distribute them, of course.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. Yes. We will also benefit from your very interesting presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, and we would like to seize the opportunity also to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Keep on giving your contribution to this fight against the climate change, which is the next crisis we have to face with. Yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.